What if I told you that $200 million of taxpayer money, your money, was quietly pulled away from real border staffing, real community programs, and real security needs, and poured instead into a glossy media campaign built around the image of one government official? Not a crisis response, not an emergency briefing, but something that looked and sounded so much like a political commercial that even conservative watchdogs called it out. And when a top lawmaker finally confronted the official behind it, the exchange didn't just get tense, it exposed how far some leaders are willing to bend the rules when public money becomes a tool for self-promotion.
Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. The floor now belongs to the gentlelady from Connecticut, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, who got here as quick as she could. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My God, this is twice in one day here, so it's great to see you. We're hearing hopping here. Thank you so much, and I want to thank the ranking member Underwood for holding the hearing today, and welcome to you, Madam Secretary, and thank you for appearing before the subcommittee today. I just want to begin with a message to your workforce, if I might, and that's I'm grateful, very grateful for the work that they do, from search and rescue efforts of the Coast Guard to our first responders around the ground after natural disasters, to those keeping us safe in the air and on the ground and at sea. I want to start with some big picture questions, because I think we know very little of the details about where the $646 million cuts within FEMA's grant programs will come from. It is no secret that there are numerous reports of you, if we need to correct the record, stating that you want to, quote, eliminate FEMA within the Department of Homeland Security. I'm concerned about the direction that the administration is taking with regard to FEMA, canceling programs like BRIC, a program enacted into law by President Trump in his first term without any evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse, alongside the freezing of grants, and now 2026 budget requests targeting even more of FEMA's resources. And just right now, in terms of looking at the cancellations, the Science and Technology Directors, Centers of Excellence, and Office of University Programs, as I mentioned, the FEMA-administered grant programs frozen virtually all grant obligations pending a review as it determines whether it will try to choke off funding for unacceptable political reasons. Resources for states and communities to respond to disasters, secure firefighting equipment, protect against terrorism, secure our ports, and much more is being held up. And as I mentioned, the cancellation of the BRIC program, funding to support hazard mitigation, reduce the toll of future disasters, save lives. That money's not going out. Research has shown mitigation efforts like BRIC save a minimum of $6 for every dollar invested, and save more than double when including mitigation of economic impacts. So federal disaster relief should be readily available across the United States, regardless of where you live. Natural disasters happen everywhere. They should not be concerned about the federal government turning their back on them when they need the help the most. We need to give constituents what they need when they're facing tragedy, that they will not be stranded due to political discord. My ask of you is, what is your plan with regard to FEMA? Are you planning to eliminate FEMA? Your testimony references that you want to, quote, eliminate dysfunction of the current agency. I'm unclear, I don't know if my colleagues are clear on what you mean by dysfunction. And I'm concerned that you're causing more dysfunction within the workforce that should be preparing itself for the pending hurricane season.
Well, thank you for your question and the discussion on this topic today. President Trump has been very clear since the beginning that he believes that FEMA and its response in many, many circumstances has failed the American people, and that FEMA as it exists today should be eliminated and empowering states to respond to disasters with federal government support.
With all due respect, where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA? I don't know about everybody else on this. My state, Connecticut, was hit very, very hard with Superstorm Sandy. Every community in some way or another has been hit by that. And the FEMA on the ground, people come in, work with the families, deal with getting the funding out. Where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA?
Congresswoman, we still have claims open from Hurricane Katrina. We have fire claims that are still unpaid to people who said they were due them 7 to 8 to 10 years old. They have never been paid by FEMA. So one of the worst things that the federal government can do is to stand up in front of the American public and say, we will be there, we will walk alongside you in the most horrible time of your life, and then never follow through on it.
Well, that's
what
not-
the president has said is he's sick and tired of federal agencies that pick and choose who wins and who loses. He wants to make sure that the federal government's commitment, when it makes a commitment, that it follows through. So he's going to empower states.
The federal government
and
is
local-
abdicating its commitment to the American people who find
It did
themselves.
certainly under Joe Biden's administration. But now President Trump's going to make
Let me
sure
just say this
that
to you. The
communities are
Office
ready
of
for
Professional
disasters.
Responsibility. The Office of Professional, because I knew you were going to go there. As you know, FEMA's Office of Professional Responsibility, under the Biden administration, there was no evidence, no direction or agency or field leadership to discriminate against disaster victims based on political
I'll
affiliation,
give you all
which
the
was a
evidence you
charge.
need. I'll follow up with you.
Well,
get
and
you
I will
those
follow
down.
up. I will follow up, and I follow up with my colleagues, quite frankly, and to really listen to people whose states, communities have been devastated, and what role FEMA has played. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars went out in Louisiana. Actually, I've asked my staff to calculate that when Katrina hit, and the response was overwhelming. And the response has been overwhelming. If you want to make corrections, that's fine. We all agree with that.
Yeah, we can point to thousands and thousands of
Well,
instances where
if you wouldn't
FEMA
mind getting
was
this
timely
committee,
and
if you
responsive
wouldn't
to
mind
people.
getting this committee,
Unfortunately.
the information and the evidence where you talk about the dysfunction of the agency and where it has really failed, that would be important to those of us who are, are appropriating dollars. And it would appear that the administration overall has a way in which they're looking at dismantling the federal government. The states will never have the amount of money because the federal government isn't going to pass that money to the states to be able to deal with what happens. It's when the federal government comes in and be able to give a hand to do that. And I think it's very clear from what you said that both yourself and the president really want to dismantle the federal government and the agencies that have provided service to the American people for decades. I thank the chair for your time and yield back.
That moment came when Rep. Rosa DeLauro sat across from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and began pulling the threads of a decision that, once unraveled, revealed something much bigger than an ad campaign. It revealed a mindset, a belief that public funds can be spent on private image building and that no one would push back. But someone did. From the opening seconds of the hearing, DeLauro didn't tiptoe. She didn't soften. She dove straight into the heart of the controversy, laying out what many people suspected but hadn't seen confirmed, that earlier in the year the administration released a border security advertisement that looked less like an informational briefing and more like a polished political spot. Bright production, dramatic framing, a clear protagonist at the center of the story. And that figure wasn't the American people. According to DeLauro, the advertisement was essentially a campaign-style video featuring Noem's own image. Something meant to shape perception, something paid for, she emphasized, not with private money, not with campaign money, but with public funds. She reminded the room that the ad wasn't cheap, not even close. She cited a staggering $200 million allocated to the project, an eye-watering figure for any government communications effort, but nearly unbelievable when compared against the agencies that were supposed to receive those funds. Agencies dealing with serious real-world issues, immigration services battling backlogs, border agents in need of personnel and technology, communities seeking resilience funding after floods and fires. Instead, a huge portion of that money was rerouted into polished messaging, and two companies in particular benefited from it. One, she noted, received a contract worth over $11 million, another secured more than $35 million. Together they were the backbone of one of the most expensive promotional pushes the department had ever produced. And as DeLauro laid it out, she didn't do it with vague warnings or general frustration. She pulled receipts. She quoted from reports. She referenced remarks made publicly. She cited watchdog organizations, including groups that are not known for criticizing conservative administrations. Even the Cato Institute, she said, a traditionally conservative think tank, called the campaign an example of wasteful government spending that should be eliminated. That wasn't coming from opposition messaging, that was coming from people who usually support border spending and usually defend strong federal security authority. When groups like that start sounding the alarm, it means the issue has crossed a line from policy debate into something much more concerning: misuse. But DeLauro wasn't just angry about the spending, she was focused on the legal foundation, or lack of one. Because in government, every dollar has a destination, every appropriation has a purpose. When Congress authorizes spending, it does so with precision. Money for customs officers is meant for customs officers. Money for immigration services is meant for immigration services, and DeLauro reminded Noem of this fundamental truth. DHS does not have the power to repurpose those funds however it chooses. Congress holds that authority, always. It is the backbone of the Constitution. It is the safeguard that stops executive agencies from treating the federal budget like a personal wallet. So when DeLauro said, "You have no authority to abrogate these funds," it wasn't a dramatic flourish. It was a constitutional correction. It was a reminder that even the highest-ranking officials cannot bypass congressional control simply because they want a message to reach the public, especially not when that message resembles political branding. During the exchange, DeLauro even referenced remarks Noem had made at a political conference, remarks that raised eyebrows nationwide. According to Noem's own retelling, the president had given her specific instructions about the ad campaign, including telling her personally that she should appear in the ads. More than that, she said he instructed her on the exact lines to deliver. DeLauro's voice sharpened as she repeated the quote, "I want you in the ads. I want your face in the ads." That statement alone ignited speculation online about whether the ads were informational or whether they were, as many suspected, politically motivated. The moment Noem repeated that story publicly, she unintentionally strengthened the argument that the ads weren't about border updates, they were about image making. And then DeLauro dropped the number again: $200 million, not for roads, not for schools, not for border agents or asylum processing infrastructure, for ads. Ads featuring the secretary, ads influenced by political guidance, ads produced by companies with histories tied to partisan messaging, all of it funded by taxpayers. All of it justified, according to Noem, because she believed the media would not tell the story accurately. Therefore, to correct the narrative, she believed the department needed to produce its own, but that justification set off alarm bells far beyond the room. Because the argument that the government must produce state-funded messaging to balance the media is not new. It is in fact one of the oldest rationales used by governments that move toward information control. It's a slope that many nations have slid down before, and once you start walking toward it, it becomes increasingly difficult to stop. Yet DeLauro wasn't finished. She turned to another issue, one that seemed unrelated on the surface but once connected, painted a disturbing picture of priorities. She pointed to FEMA's recent decision to cut the BRIC program, a major initiative designed to help communities strengthen infrastructure before disasters strike. The program had helped small towns reinforce bridges, fund flood control, build fire breaks, and invest in resilient utilities. Cutting that program was not a minor adjustment, it was a removal of support for millions of Americans living in areas increasingly threatened by storms, wildfires, and rising climate risks. And the reason FEMA gave for reducing it: waste, fraud, and abuse. But when DeLauro's staff asked the agency for evidence, specific examples of misuse that justified eliminating an entire national resilience program, they reportedly couldn't provide any. Not one instance that met federal standards, not one documented case that aligned with GAO definitions. Instead, they cited due diligence takes a long time, as if the slowness of a process justified dismantling it entirely. DeLauro contrasted that with the speed and enthusiasm with which DHS funded its ad campaign. There was no slow process there. No concerns about due diligence. No hesitation about pumping tens of millions into promotional production. What did that suggest? Priorities. And the priorities, she argued, were fundamentally upside down. Cut a program that prepares communities for disasters, expand a program that prepares officials for political visibility. And this is where the room shifted. Because when DeLauro connected those dots, misuse of funds, abandonment of constitutional limits, outsourcing tens of millions to political advertising firms, cutting disaster programs in the same period, she revealed something that went beyond bureaucratic mismanagement. She revealed a worldview, one where power is preserved through messaging rather than policy, one where the image matters more than the impact, one where taxpayer funds can be reshaped without oversight as long as it protects those in charge. But the defining moment came when DeLauro flatly told Noem, "You do not have the authority. Not you, not the president. The Constitution does not permit this." In hearings, it is rare for a lawmaker to confront an official that bluntly. It is even rarer to accuse them directly of violating constitutional boundaries. And it is almost unheard of to do so while the official is sitting right there defending the decision in real time. The silence in the room was telling, because what DeLauro was really calling out wasn't just the money, it wasn't just the ad, it wasn't even the constitutional breach, it was the arrogance of assuming no one would challenge it. The assumption that taxpayer dollars are so abstract, so distant, so spread out, that no one would notice when they're redirected into political messaging. That oversight committees would stay quiet, that the public wouldn't connect the dots. But when those dots become visible, when $200 million vanishes into a media machine while real programs are gutted, people do notice. And when a lawmaker with DeLauro's experience steps forward and names it for what it is, people listen. As the hearing wrapped, the bigger picture settled in. This wasn't just a dispute about spending. It wasn't even about an ad campaign. It was about the soul of government. About whether public service would remain public, or whether it would become a tool for consolidating influence. It was a test of whether Congress still has the power to protect taxpayer money from being used as political currency. And it was a reminder that democracy survives not through grand speeches or patriotic slogans, but through tedious, determined oversight. Through hearings like this, through people willing to say no, stop, this is not what the law allows. And that leaves one final thought: if $200 million can be redirected into messaging once, what stops it from happening again? If one program can be cut without evidence, how many more can quietly disappear? If government begins shifting money from real protection to political promotion, who is left to protect the public? Those questions aren't abstract, they're urgent. And they affect every taxpayer, every community, every family depending on agencies to do their jobs, not advertise them. If you believe taxpayer money should protect people, not promote politicians, if you think accountability matters, if you want more breakdowns like this, make sure to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe so you never miss the next investigation.